So good with another Hindu analysis video. On the first page, we see that the center has promised to address the air pollution and the stubble burning issue in Delhi, as well as in the area around the NCR. So, the stubble burning is a very important problem, very problem of urgent concern, especially in the times of winter, because this is the time when the air wind movement is slow, and which leads to a lot of pollution in the area, in the NCR region. Next, India to sign the geospatial cooperation deal with US. So India and US will sign the last foundational agreement, that is BECA. So before that, we have seen that India has signed the LEMUA, the COMCASA, and this is BECA, that Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement for Geospatial Cooperation. This is all about the news. And next, what is important here is about BECA. And next, about cow slaughter. The Allahabad High Court has expressed concern at the misuse of anti-cow slaughter law. So the UP Prevention of Cow Slaughter Act is being misused against innocent persons. This is what the Allahabad High Court has noted. It is said that that a person who was unlawfully caught, he was charged with cow slaughter. He was booked under the Act, but there was no charges against the petitioner in the FIR. So there's a misuse of law. So this can be used as an example of misuse of law. Next is the city page, where nothing is of that much importance. Next, we'll quickly flip through the pages. Effort on to block child pornography. So Google has informed the Delhi High Court that it is an ongoing effort to develop more effective tools. So child pornography is a menace, and Google has informed the Delhi High Court that it is trying its level best to stop child pornography. So as of now, Google said that any child pornographic content that is hosted on its platform is immediately removed. But before reporting, the platform has still not come up with anything which can filter the content. So prevention of uploading the same content prior to the content being reported is still difficult. So Google does use AI and machine learning to prevent the uploading of child pornographic content in respect of any known and reported image. But it has limitations, because a known hash file or a digital fingerprint is then applied for removing images with the same value. So this technology has still not developed yet to actually kind of filter a content before it is uploaded. Next, we come to the editorial page. This is about the India-China in the West Asian region, the India-China relationship in the West Asian region. And the author says that the engagement by India and China in the West Asia is a good example of their metamorphosing approaches. Now, India and China has seen a lot of tension between these two countries, especially in the Galwan region of Ladakh. We saw there were aggressionist tendencies by China this year. China was being very aggressive. It was trying to trying to take over the Galwan Valley. Now, these events have a very cascading effect on the thought process of foreign policy. So it's not just for New Delhi, but also with regard to its neighborhood, but also Beijing's understanding of its own threat perceptions as well. So the author says that strategic autonomy is today a term New Delhi's power corridors are well acquainted with. So India basically wants a strategic autonomy. So India doesn't want to come under the dictates of its of the higher powers. So it wants to maintain an autonomy. At the same time, it wants to maintain a strategic balance between its different allies. The ideation of strategic autonomy is much different from the Nehruvian era thinking of non-alignment. So the strategic autonomies today is not exactly what was the Nehruvian non-alignment policy. So they are saying that the alignment is issue-based. So the NAM movement that we had, it was essentially not based on it was based on an ideology, but the autonomy that we are following today is based on an issue. So we support countries based on issues and not based on some rigid ideology. So for Beijing and New Delhi, one region where both contesting neighbors have similar versions of non-alignment are in West Asia. Because West Asia basically has three poles of power. One is Saudi Arabia, one is Iran, and one is Israel. But India and China both don't want to entangle or side with any one powers. So at one time it was suggested to construct an importers OPEC to put forward the interest of major oil importers. So India and China are the major oil importers. So talks were on to go for an importers OPEC, not only an exporters, against the producers. But in the year 2020, there has been geopolitical shifts. There has been important events like the US-China trade war, the deteriorating ties to the COVID pandemic, followed by the Ladakh crisis. So the geopolitical situation has kind of turned. It has changed. There has been shifts. Now, before 2020, India's outreach to West Asia sharpened since the coming of the Modi government. And West Asia, we all know, are very oil-rich. Gulf states are there in West Asia. So India was looking for investment alternatives. So the Gulf countries were looking for investment alternatives away from the West, and hence they started to look towards India as a important investment partner. And they were attracted to Modi's centralized decision-making style. So India also doubled on its relationships with Abu Dhabi and Riyadh, so giving open economic and political preference to the larger Gulf region. Now, Iran lagged behind. Already Iran had US sanctions, which in turn significantly slowed the pace of Iran-India engagements. We already know that India is planning the Chabahar port in Iran. But since India was moving towards West Asia, there was a shift in India's West Asia policy where it was moving towards the Gulf countries. There was an inclination towards the Gulf countries. So there was a drift away. It was drifting apart from Iran. Now this turned advantageous for Beijing. So Beijing has tried to capitalize around the thinking in the Gulf that American security safety is not absolute, and hence they need to invest more in others. So China, who is second only to US in economic and military terms, is the obvious engagement. Hence, the UAE obtained Chinese Wing-Lung drones in 2016, which is a copy of US Army's MQ-9 Reaper drone that Washington refused to sell, which offers a good example of the Gulf's resolve of attaining military capabilities from wherever possible. Second, the Gulf economies such as Saudi Arabia, even though attempting a hard shift away from their addiction to petrodollar, still need growing markets to sell their oil in the coming decade. So China first, it became a major arms exporter to the Gulf countries, to Saudi Arabia, and also a major market for their sale of petrol. But China has also been engaging with Iran. So China is taking advantage of the gap that has the chasm that has been created between India and Iran because of India's pro Gulf stance, and so a 400 billion 25-year understanding between Iran and China, with Beijing taking advantage of Trump's abandonment of Iran's nuclear deal. So it wants to offer an alternative model for investment and influence. And they want to develop a new forum to address the region's tensions, an alternative to the West-led ecosystem. It remains to be seen, however, China balances itself between the poles of power while backing one. Next. So from India's perspective, it is a trapeze wire balancing act of diplomacy in West Asia. The overt outreach of the Gulf and the ensuing announcements. So the key word is the trapeze wire balancing act. The trapeze wire balancing act. India has to do the balancing act. The overt outreach to the Gulf and the ensuing announcements of multi-dollar investment on Indian shores by UAE and Saudi Arabia. And there has been general tensions between the Gulf states and Iran, and also Saudi and UAE and so on have maintained relatively strong and stable economic progression despite the tensions. Now, Israel's peace accords with UAE and Bahrain add weight towards a stable Gulf region. And the theory of interest superseding ideology on foreign policy is actually becoming very practical, both from the perspectives of India and China. In the recent past, in the Indo-Pacific, with the development of the Quad, which has taken the center stage, other geographies like West Asia have also started to showcase examples of New Delhi and Beijing's metamorphosing approaches towards the international arena. Now, this is about the Pakistan's role in FATF. It says that Pakistan has very little option but to complete its FATF mandated tasks in the next 4 months. So, the FATF, which is Paris based, has decided to keep Pakistan on the grey list, which has disappointed the Pakistan government, who felt that the country would be taken away from the grey list, as the monitored jurisdictions on terror financing and money laundering have been cleared. So Pakistan will now face international strictures on its markets and will be its ability to procure loans until the next FATF plenary. So Turkey was the only other country in the 39-member FATF to push for Pakistan to be let off, by making a suggestion that the last 6 points be declared by an on-site visit by an FATF team. Now, what is important is for how it affects India. So, what are the criteria for being laid off the FATF grey list? Is more action against UNSC-backed terrorists and terror groups, action against charitable organizations linked to these banned entities, tracing fugitive territories and pursuing convictions against them, revising the list of banned entities under the Anti-Terrorism Act to reflect all those banned by the UNSC, and cracking down on all other channels of terrorist financing, including narcotics and smuggling. Now, how does it affect New Delhi? FATF has retained Pakistan on the grey list for the 3rd time this year, and and has not downgraded it to the blacklist at par with Iran and North Korea. Now, the Pakistan has been lending support to groups like LET and GAM that target India to refrain So but these are the steps that have been taken. Like, he has made a legislative push to bring Pakistani anti-terror laws in line with international standards. Also, he has ensured sufficient pressure on groups so that they don't raise public money or money publicly, or they make public comments. Now, Pakistan's support to the Afghan peace process and talks with the Taliban are very crucial for the peace process, and the FATF process has made Islamabad more amenable to helping Afghanistan. It remains to be seen if the action it takes will permanently change Pakistan's course in supporting and sheltering cross border terror groups. So it is not just in stopping attacks by these groups, but for Pakistan to fully dismantle the infrastructure of the terror, in the understanding that it is Pakistan's own interest to do so. Next, we come to women at the heart of recovery. So, India has an opportunity to build climate resilience and address gender equality issues. Next, India's women are extremely vulnerable. Like, greater demands for unpaid work during the pandemic and rising rate of reported violence, these remain are a stark reminder of the work that remains to be done. So, according to the India Voluntary National Review 2020, FLPR for the 15 to 59 age group is showing a declining trend, one of the lowest in the world. According to IMF estimates, equal participation of women in the workforce will increase India's GDP by 27%. Now, Indian government has nearly invested $22.5 billion in the COVID recovery. So, aligning these recovery packages with India's commitments on climate change by investing in green jobs will actually improve lives. So, if recovery packages can be coupled with investment in green jobs to tackle the climate change, then that will really make the planet healthy. That will really improve the climate resilience structure of India. Now, these have to be distributed across sectors like agriculture, urban planning, energy, health sector, and in climate resilient civil works, including the MNREGA. Now, what is the role of India in such kind of endeavors? Comprising more than 50% of the agri-labor force and nearly 14% of entrepreneurs, women's relationship with the environment is a very useful, and this interface, women and environment interface, can be harnessed to transform the lives of the vulnerable sections. Disha, which is an UNDP project which is supported by the IKEA Foundation, it has reached out to millions of women and girls. It shows the benefits of investing in local jobs for women in vulnerable communities. And what are the impact of these jobs? Reduce carbon emission, climate resilience, and it also tries to change the disruptive social norms and behaviors that restricts women's participation. For example, SEWA and the Electronics Sector Council of India started an initiative which was supported by the United Environment Program by training 15,000 solar technicians who were rural women for the maintenance of solar pumps in remote locations. The initiative will not only introduce clean energy options but also reduce production cost. So, accelerating the transition to renewable energy with low carbon footprints can help provide sustainable livelihood to poor women. So, the ADB projects that India's GDP growth rate will rebound to 8% in 2021-22. So, putting women at the heart of this recovery it will make it faster, just, and inclusive. Next, we have the article on advertisements, which is about the Tanishq ad, which says that social historian Daniel Boorstin, writing in 1960, called advertising the most characteristic and remunerative form of American literature. Marshall McLuhan ranked advertising among the 20th century's greatest art form. So, 45, and this is about the intolerance regarding the issue regarding the Tanishq ad. So it says that advertising is a persuasion industry. It has a very deep impact on a human's psyche, but so advertising has not only been a way of selling products, but also a way of selling life. Now, according to Roland Barthes, advertising is called the supreme myth maker of our age and adds the closest modern approximation to ancient myths. Now, by selling at the subliminal level, advertising actually insinuates itself into everyday customs and practices and becomes popular culture. So it defines social constructs such as modernity or success. So creating desirable myths. Now, what is the motivation, the positive rule of these advertisements? So less than 3% of marriages in India are interreligious and is unlikely to change any soon. A majority of Indians will continue to marry within their community. But by depicting an interreligious marriage, advertising creates a certain desirable myth. For example, the Myntra's lesbian ad in 2015, it conjured up a society that accepts a non-heterosexual relationship. And in that way, it erased the taboos and ostracism. So cultural studies scholars like Judith Wilson have said advertising has a function which I believe in many ways replaces the traditionally fulfilled by art and religion. It creates meaning. যাও এখান থেকে যাও So whether the Tanishq commercial or the Surf Excel ad last, which showed a Hindu girl protecting a Muslim boy from being splashed with holy colors, or on his way to namaz, it all propose a kind of harmonious coexistence. So they reflect not only who we are, but who we want to be. And they are actually, they signal a final bankruptcy of imagination. And it's more clear that ever now that imagination, after all, is also a nation. So cultural reinvention will be stopped if we stop the imagination, if we dwell too much on financial bankruptcy. Next, we have what we have learned from the COVID pandemic. It says that countries that have invested in primary healthcare over the past 2 are reaping the benefits now. Also, a positive role of science and scientists and the collaboration. The pandemic has a differential impact on women, which is the gendered side. India has seen progress in maternal mortality. There have been significant gain in infant mortality, institutional birth, and replacement level fertility. There's still a high unmet need for family planning and improved access to safe labor and contraceptive services. which recent studies said that because of reduced coverage in essential services, the prevalence of wasting in children could increase by 50 to 10 to 50%. 60% more maternal deaths because interventions like administration of uterotonics and antibiotics and clean birth environment is not available. It has also disrupted the education system. In other words, the domestic violence. One third said that they had previously experienced domestic, but less than one sought help from the police. Women lost their jobs in the informal sector and income fell by over 60%. Number of women and girls living in extreme poverty expected to increase to 100 million. Lack of availability of data that is disaggregated by sex and age. We do not have data on violence. 70% of countries reported complete disruption of immunization services. Other services like diagnosis, treatment of non-communicable diseases, cancer diagnosis, treatment, family planning, contraception, antenatal care, etc., TB detection, treatment facility, etc., as well as emergency services have huge impact. So out-of-pocket payments cause 100 million to fall into extreme poverty. 800 million globally spent more than 10% of household budget. WHO urges countries to ensure financial protection and effective coverage of health services. The Effective Coverage Index is a useful measure of the quality of health services. It looks at the provision and efficacy of services in terms of health outcomes. 3.1 billion people worldwide would still not be covered if we continue to do what we are doing. Many countries do not have data systems to be able to accurately measure both mortality and the incidence of certain diseases. So India needs to invest more on its registration system. And what more? We need more digital platforms to provide telemedicine. Example, to overcome the problem that people could not meet physically. ECO has been used. ECO is a platform which has been used in many states to train health workers, and government's eSanjeevani platform enabling telemedicine appointments. The National Digital Health Blueprint and a roadmap is what now we have. We want to move towards electronic and portable health records. Not only about government governance principle, but also new ways of data sharing, enabling local contextualized decision making. We also need to think about working with the private sector, which is already playing a big role. The Aravind Eye Hospital in Puducherry, they did an experiment with shared medical appointments, which resulted in better outcomes as well as higher productivity apart from reducing cost. Also, we need to integrate social protection system, food and health. India has done much to ensure these services, but we still have not been successful in expanding it to a very large level to the vulnerable population. There is false or misleading information leads to harmful behavior, and there's a lot of mistrust among people. So we have done a lot of work, but infodemic management is not straightforward. It's linked to people's beliefs and behavior. So we have to have a behavioral insights. So we have to empower our frontline workers. We need to invest in them to ensure that they have the tools. So we have to invest in institutional capacities in regulatory bodies, research, public health institutes. So health literacy should also be used to counter the fear, stigma that is circulated on social media. So, India is on the path to investing in universal health coverage. Financial resources are very important, but we also need investment in human resources and in engaging and empowering communities. Health system cannot only be about the supply side, it has to keep in mind how to involve citizens and people. It is trying to serve and have them involved in developing the services that we are bringing to them. Now, this is about India is much safer against the tsunami threat. It says we have the state of the art tsunami early warning system at INCOIS. The best of warning systems could fail if communities are not prepared. So there has been significant improvement in tsunami early warning capability from absolutely no warning to, or for that matter, any public knowledge of tsunamis. And then we have reached a stage where we can detect large undersea earthquakes in real time and provide tsunami warning in 10 to 20 minutes. So, ocean-wide tsunami drills and piloting of UNESCO IOC Tsunami Ready initiative provide a structured framework for capacity building of coastal communities to respond effectively to tsunamis. Now, this is about the Becca deal. India has posted a liaison officer at the US Navy Center in Bahrain recently and is considering a US request for posting a liaison officer at the US Indo-PACOM and the US Special Operations. Next, this is about the Mahadalits that we have. So the Rishi Dev community, who are among the 21 Mahadalit castes in Bihar, with village after village echoing the same hopelessness. So this is about the poor plight of these Mahadalit communities. This can just be used as an example. Now, the Supreme Court on Monday decided to keep in abeyance is to keep aside its pre-Dasera order appointing former Supreme Court Judge Madan Lokur to one-man committee to monitor the stubble burning. So, Lokur committee is for stubble burning. Now, this is about how polio networks helped curb COVID. UP, the most populous states, used polio microplans twice in the last 3 months to identify 2 lakhs COVID. So the polio integrated surveillance and immunization networks in the 5 polio priority countries were repurposed to support preparedness and response. So it says that at the ground level, the ASHAs and ANMs have helped to manage the migrant population and enhance awareness. So there has been a sharp focus by the central government not only containing but also reducing deaths, and in such cases, the polio surveillance committees have come to a great help. Training, building capacities for laboratory, etc., assessing public perceptions, etc., and preparedness. WHO's polio surveillance networks in India, Indonesia, supporting the strategies which help them refined over the years and which help the region achieve the polio-free certification. This is all about today's Hindu newspaper. Now, in Chile, there is a landmark referendum on Sunday to replace the dictatorship era constitution. So, they are putting a referendum to bring a new constitution. China is levying sanctions on big US companies like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, etc., which are involved in Washington's arms sales to Taiwan. Now, problems of China. China has a rising debt problem, one exacerbated by the pandemic, with the government losing its purse strings to sustain growth. Debt to GDP is expected to rise by 25% to 300% of GDP this year. So, China basically follows a planned model. China also has to go carbon neutral by 2060. China will need to reduce its share of coal in the energy mix from 58% to less than 50% by 2025. So that's all about the newspaper.